Hey everyone, Steve Powell here. This situation about Ravi Zacharias that has come out lately is very, very disturbing. It's very, very shocking for many in the church. But I want to say that it's probably more shocking to other people than it is to me. And if you know anything about my history the last few years, then you know why I'm saying that. Um, I was with somebody under a ministry who I had the utmost respect for, who I looked at as someone who was flawed, yes, but someone that ultimately I thought had a good heart, had a heart for the Lord, had a heart for other people, had a heart for people like me. And, I joined this ministry. I got ordained under this ministry. I donated thousands of dollars over the years to this ministry because I believed that this man had a pure heart for the Lord. And come to find out, to my horror, this man turned out to be the very definition of what the Bible calls a wolf in sheep's clothing. And oftentimes, when there is a true wolf that is in sheep's clothing, they're not just fooling other people. They're not just deceiving other people and their victims and people they prey on. They're deceiving themselves as well. And that's why they're so convincing in their deception. That's why they're so convincing many times in avoiding being caught and things like this, is because they wholeheartedly believe many of the lies that they themselves enforce to keep, under the radar and to keep operating the way that they do. And, my heart is broken because I read through the Zacharias report. I read through, some of the articles in the report itself that was conducted by the independent investigation team. And there's so many similarities, to what I saw, with what I went through. But here's what I want to say. People are asking all over the world right now, how could this be? How is this possible? How can a man go decades in the ministry and be this type of a predator and have this type of abuse going on behind the scenes, even using millions of dollars of ministry money to facilitate this abuse? How does this happen for so many years and nobody take notice? Okay, well, I can tell you from a spiritual standpoint, I wasn't just privy to evidence that came forth or witness testimony, things like that. But also, the Lord used my prophetic gift with what I went through to tell me exactly what I was dealing with, not just in the natural, but in the spirit. And I can tell you that in the church, there are high-level demonic spirits, even principalities, that have a vested interest in keeping men and women that are at a high level of compromise and sin. They have a vested interest in keeping these men and women in high places of authority and influence. I'm convinced that someone like Ravi Zacharias, to go 40 years under the radar, essentially, he essentially went his entire life, even though there was some stuff that surfaced at the end, but he still didn't get nailed for it. It was only after he died and he could not employ all of the power structure that he had built and all the influence that he wielded to protect himself. It was only after he died that he couldn't do that this stuff was really uncovered. But I can tell you firsthand that is supernatural, okay? No man, no human being, I'm convinced, in their own strength and in their own power can hide that well, okay? Nobody can keep the truth suppressed and have that many victims for that many years without supernatural help. And I can assure you that help is not coming from God. It's coming from the evil spirits that they partner with. Ask yourself, why is it that every single person in America knows where the mafia hangs out? We know where the mob bosses hang out. We know the cities they dwell in. Many people even know some of the businesses they're involved in. I can name off several businesses right now that the mob in America owns. Yet nothing happens to them, and they stay under the radar, and they continue to operate. Why is that? Because there's some very high-powered evil spirits involved in protecting the enterprise. It's connected with drugs. It's connected with murder, gang activity. It's connected with politics and with unions. Okay. We've had some of the recent things uncovered with political families, the Clintons, the Bidens, and they're essentially like crime bosses. Seriously. But nothing happens and nothing ultimately comes of it. It's because there's a supernatural element involved. The war must be won on our knees before it's ever won in a court of law. It's the same thing in the church. When I was dealing with the situation I dealt with a few years ago, I came up against some of the nastiest demonic resistance you could ever imagine. And so that's number one, is you have to know what you're dealing with. You're not wrestling with flesh and blood, but with principalities and powers, rulers of darkness in heavenly places. Number two, in order for those powers to be broken, and make no mistake about it, those powers have to be broken in order for these perpetrators in the flesh to really be dealt with, and for the sin to really be dealt with. But many times, in order for those powers to be broken, it takes men and women of a certain character and of a certain spirit to really deal with it. And, one of the most shocking things that I found in my investigation with Todd Bentley, the one that I was involved with, was there were many, many men, many women, many ministers, many very influential ministers that had known about his indiscretions and had known about his predator behavior for a long time. Okay? They had known about his stuff for a long time and never did anything about it. And I don't think it's because they're wicked people. I think many of them just counted the cost and didn't want to deal with the heat that would have came down on them if they would have dared to cross him. At one time, Todd was, I would say, one of the most powerful, charismatic, spirit-filled ministers on the planet. I mean, at one time during his height at Lakeland, he was raking in, $1 million a night at times in those offerings. He had a sock drawer at one time that was full of $100,000 in Pentecostal handshakes. Imagine $100,000 accumulated just from people walking up to you at revival meetings and handing you money. He commanded a considerable amount of influence in this movement, power, and he was not afraid to come after you if you crossed him. He was not afraid to destroy you, if you came after him. And I had all the threats, trust me, not just in the natural, even physical threats, all the legal threats. Stephen, you're going to lose your ministry. We're going to destroy you. Todd leveraged all of his contacts, all of his relationships that he had in ministry, would name them off and name call. And, he wasn't as powerful, really, in the natural even, when I had to deal with him as he was at the height in Lakeland. But I can tell you the spiritual forces that were still surrounding him were still just as potent and powerful as ever. But I had to lay down my life, essentially. I had to put my ministry on the altar and say, I'm going to do the right thing no matter what. And I'm going to leave the rest to God. And that's really what it takes. And I want to encourage you sometime, read 2 Chronicles chapter 26. The Bible says that Azzariah the priest went in after him with 80 other priests of the Lord, and they were valiant men. And they confronted Uzziah. Uzziah had grown incredibly powerful, because of the blessing of the Lord, because he went to war for the Lord. And there's people like that, the Todd Bentleys, the Ravi Zachariases, others, influential men and women in ministry. God blesses them, and God promotes them, and God causes wealth and money and power and anointing to come their way so they can go to war, and they can win souls, and they can advance the kingdom. But as the saying goes, power corrupts. It so easily corrupts, and that's why it's so important to have just such a firm foundation with the Lord, relationship with Jesus. It's so important to have solid standards, integrity, character, certain lines you're not willing to cross no matter what. And I can tell you that people now are looking at all the different accountability structures and, it was just that Ravi Zacharias had his own independent ministry, so he was able to manipulate things more. And there may be some truth with that, but I can tell you right now, Just look at the history of the church. Look at the history of institutional, Christianity, organizational, denominational Christianity versus, independent ministries like this. And the same thing happens in every kind of structure you can imagine. Okay, where you have people of influence, you have power. And a man or a woman ultimately gets to decide what they're going to do with power. Are they going to take their power and humble themselves before God and be accountable, first to God, and out of their personal accountability to God, they're accountable to others. They ask for help when they need it. Or are they going to use their power, like the Todd Bentleys and the Ravi Zacharias, to protect their sinful lifestyles, to promulgate their own sinful behavior, and to hide it, and to destroy anybody that would dare cross them. So I can tell you right now, it just comes down to individuals. I know that's not what a lot of people want to hear. They want to come up with an institutional solution, but there is no institutional solution to this. That's why Jesus never provided one. Jesus never said to the disciples, before he left, boys, make sure you got a good accountability system in place, otherwise you're going to fall. No, it was always about intimacy with him. It was always about walking with him. Those who truly walk with the Lord, do not want to do anything to hurt his heart. Do not want to do anything to lay one finger on one of his precious children. That is the truth, and it's clear that the things that Ravi Zacharias did, he did because he was far from God. And I tell you right now, that should be a major wake-up call to the church right now. That how can a man who was considered the closest to God by so many be so far from him? So, this is going to have, I believe, its intended effect that the Lord has orchestrated here. And make no mistake about it, the Lord has orchestrated this exposure. But I believe it's going to have its intended effect. I believe there needs to be shaking. I believe men and women out there that are doing similar things need to be put on notice, need to be put in fear. You should fear God, You should fear the Lord before you dare to take the pulpit, before you dare to speak in the name of the Lord. You should fear God. You should treat every day like it's your last, and you should ask yourself the question every morning when you get up, am I ready to meet the Lord today? And that's how you should live your life. So I pray this has been a blessing to you, insightful to you. This is so sad. Once again, I encourage you to pray for the victims, pray for the family of Ravi Zacharias, the ministry, as they move forward and decide what they need to do as a ministry. And pray that the Lord continues to do this. This is the Lord's doing. He's exposing things like this. He's trying to get a bride ready to meet him, pure, spotless, without wrinkle. So keep praying. God bless you. Pour out your